Welcome back, my Mercy Watson lovers. We are going to finish number 6 tonight. Mercy Watson, Something Wonky This Way Comes. So, okay, for the recap, remember the Watsons invited sort of almost everybody in their neighborhood to go and see the movie at the drive-ins. And once they got there, Mr. Watson and the little boy, Frank, that's his name, right? They go to get the bottomless popcorn treats for everyone that's in the car. And of course, we saw that animal control officer Francine Poulet was at the drive-ins, and she sees Mercy go by. Mercy, who is following the scent of butter, I'll have you know, and going to get herself into trouble, I would assume. And so Francine Poulet is trying to show her date, Alfred P. Tompkins, what she should do to Mercy, and she has her net, and that's where we left off. Chapter 9. Mercy stopped. She sniffed. The smell of butter was very strong. The smell of butter was very near. The smell of butter was coming from the back seat of a station wagon. Mercy stuck her head in the window. She sniffed again. The smell of butter was coming from an extremely large bucket in the hands of a very small child. Mercy helped herself. The small child screamed, "Papa! Papa! A monster's eating my popcorn!" Mercy chewed. The popcorn was drenched in butter. It was delicious. Look at the little girl's face. A man stuck his face in Mercy's snout. "What do you think you're doing?" the man said. What did Mercy think she was doing? She thought she was enjoying a buttery snack. "Get out of there!" shouted the man. He gave Mercy a very forceful shove. Popcorn went flying everywhere. Mercy thought that perhaps it was time to move on. Chapter 10. In the front row of the Bijou drive-in, Officer Tomilello sat up straight in his seat. Officer Tomilello said, "Did you hear that?" Mrs. Officer Tomilello said nothing. "Was that a scream of distress?" said Officer Tomilello. "It sounded like a scream of distress," he answered himself. "Is someone in trouble?" Officer Tomilello asked. Mrs. Officer Tomilello said nothing. "It is very possible that someone is in trouble," Officer Tomilello answered himself. "Is it time for an officer of the law to step in?" Officer Tomilello asked. There's no picture. "Most definitely," he answered. Remember, he always answers his own questions. Officer Tomilello put his badge around his neck. He got out his bullhorn from the back seat. He kissed Mrs. Officer Tomilello goodbye. He said, "Am I off to make the world a safer place?" "I am," he answered himself. "I am most definitely off to make the world a safer place." Mrs. Officer Tomilello waved goodbye. Chapter 11. Mercy discovered that there was hot buttered popcorn everywhere. Every car had big buckets of popcorn. Every car had open windows. The popcorn was buttery. The popcorn was crunchy. The popcorn was delicious. Mercy helped herself. She helped herself again and again. People screamed, people laughed, people fainted. Mercy kept eating. In the meantime, Mr. Watson and Frank returned to the convertible with several bottomless buckets of popcorn. Mrs. Watson was crying. "My darling, my dear," said Mr. Watson, "what is wrong?" "It's a tragedy," said Mrs. Watson. I wouldn't exactly call it a tragedy, said Eugenia Lincoln. Mercy is missing, said Stella. Don't worry, said Mr. Watson. We'll find her. I'll wait here if you don't mind, said Eugenia Lincoln. She helped herself to some hot buttered popcorn. Chapter 12. Leroy Ninker heard people screaming about monsters. Leroy Ninker heard people shouting about pigs. Leroy Ninker saw a woman with a net run past the concession stand. What are you trying to catch? Said Leroy Ninker. A pig, said the woman with the net. A pig, said Leroy Ninker. That's right, said the woman. You're not going to catch livestock with a net, said Leroy Ninker. What you need is a lasso. Yippee-i-o! Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Stella and Frank and Baby all shouted, Mercy, mercy, mercy! Should you remain calm? Officer Tomilello asked. You most definitely should remain calm. They don't look very calm. There he is shouting. Officer Tomilello. At the ticket counter, Beatrice, Leah Paglioni, took her glasses off and put them back on. Wonky, said Beatrice, Leah Paglioni. Wonky in the extreme. Maybe it's some kind of emergency. Maybe I should call for help. Beatrice Leah Paglioni adjusted her glasses. She picked up the phone. Beatrice Leah Paglioni dialed the fire department. Chapter 13. Mercy was having a wonderful time. She had consumed a large amount of buttered popcorn, and now people were chasing after her. Mercy loved a chase. She ran faster. She kicked up her heels. Gotcha! Shouted Francine Poulet. Francine Poulet netted Officer Tomilello. Yippee-i-o! Shouted Leroy Ninker. He lassoed Francine Poulet. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Simply fascinating. What a mess. There was the sound of a siren. There was the flash of lights. A fire truck pulled into the bijou. Things seem to be out of control, said the fireman named Ned. It's the movies, said the fireman named Lorenzo. They make people crazy. There's Ned and Lorenzo. They're back. Actually, said a man who was standing next to Ned, I think the pig is making people crazy. Holy smokes, I know that pig, said Lorenzo. It's that toast-loving pig from Deckaroo Drive. I'll tell you, said the man standing next to Ned. This is way better than any movie I've seen. It's all been fascinating, simply fascinating. I guess it's time for us to come to the rescue, said Ned. We should do what only firemen can do, said Lorenzo. Ned and Lorenzo took off running. Ned and Lorenzo ran very fast. Ned and Lorenzo caught up with Mercy. Hey, said Ned, how about some toast? Yes, said Lorenzo, how about some toast with a great deal of butter? Mercy stopped running. Mercy sat down. Mercy thought very hard. Toast sounded like an excellent idea to her. Toast always sounded like an excellent idea to her. Ned sat down next to Mercy. He put his arm around her. Oh, said Mrs. Watson. "You found her." "How will we ever be able to thank you for helping us locate our darling, our dear?" said Mr. Watson. "Well," said Ned, "I'm a little hungry." "Toast would be good," said Lorenzo. "Toast?" said Mrs. Watson. "I would love to make some toast. Who else would like some toast?" Their parties have gotten bigger. "We never did get to see that movie," said Stella. "I wonder if it ended happily," said Frank. "Well," said Mrs. Watson, here we are, all of us together. "And we're all eating toast," said Mr. Watson. "I can't imagine a happier ending than that," said Mrs. Watson. "It's the happiest possible ending," said Baby Lincoln. "It's almost like a love story." "It is a love story," said Mr. Watson. "And it's very inspirational," said Mrs. Watson. The end. So that is the end of our 6 Mercy Watson tales. There they are. So we are going to do a bit of writing about Mercy Watson, and a drawing, of course, to go with her. Like any books that we've read, when we read The Wizard of Oz, we ended with a project. When we read My Father's Dragon, we ended with a project. So we will be ending with a project for our Sweet Mercy. And then for those of you who are looking for next step chapter books to read, of course, you may reread these. You may reread them on your own without my help. They're great books before 2nd grade, and they really help kids learn to read chapter books. But then the great part about Kate DiCamillo is when you look at the back, she's actually written 3 other chapter books that are great. They're called Tales from Decawoo Drive. So if you want to look at those, I know some of you in our class have already ordered them. They're a little bit more challenging, which is great because you always have to get a little bit better. But they're called Leroy Ninker Saddles Up, Francine Poulet Meets the Ghost Raccoon, and Where Are You Going, Baby Lincoln? So you actually already know the characters, which is awesome. And then Kate DiCamillo actually has another set of books out that's called Bink and Golly. And those ones look really great too. I've never seen them myself, but they look lovely. And they're not the same characters from Decawoo Drive, but they're a different set. So those are 2 other really great sets of books to read before 2nd grade. All right, parents, if you're listening. So I will be back tomorrow with a new read aloud for bedtime stories, and we'll continue our Mercy Watson. And I'll be letting everybody know when our Buttered Toast, probably pajama party, I mean, might as well, will be happening. So good night, sleep tight, and don't let the bed bugs bite. And I will see you tomorrow. I love you and I miss you. Good night.